Oh, calm down. Thank you. I'm Peter Burke. I'm a colleague of Gordon's. I guess you've seen that I wrote a book on this subject. And actually, the lecture that Gordon's having me do today has a lot of things in it that are my own work. When I was much younger, I did the work on old-growth redwood trees that appear in the chapter you've presumably read or will read. So that's what I actually did when I was a little older than you. We're going to talk about depletable resources today. Oh, my goodness. And we look for the answers to the following questions. I guess you're used to this. Are all the lectures set up well like this? Yeah, I learned a lot just by reading the slides. My course will be a lot better in the fall. What about different types of reserves? Are some of these notions of reserves meaningful? We shall see. What happens when people get better at digging oil out of the ground? Technological progress. Or notions of what's a reserve change? What's it? Choke price. Yeah, no, it's not that. It's something else. And what would happen if depletable resources are priced too low? That's not going to happen, but that's a good question. Oh no, he wants environmental externalities. We'll have environmental externalities. So let's see if we can guess some of the answers. You can guess the answer to the last question, can you not? What would happen if you had a natural resource, oil, and your pricing for oil didn't account for environmental damage that oil does when you burn it? Can you tell me what's going to happen? What's going to go wrong? Come on, now you ought to be able to tell me that. What happens if you price something too low? Yeah. People consume it too fast in the resource run. That turns out to be a very sophisticated answer. Hold that answer. And when Gordon comes back, say, geez, you know, they're going to consume the oil anyway, Gordon, so why does it matter that I don't price the externality in the atmosphere? You've discovered what's called the green paradox. The other possible answer, and I'll show you how that answer could happen, would be you consume less oil and create less of an externality. And the way you get that answer is, suppose you have cheap oil, like Saudi Arabia, just gushes out of the ground. You got expensive oil, the stuff's 9,000 feet down, you got to suck it up. Well, it might be that you never get that expensive oil. So if you price the externality of putting the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and with a high enough price, you might leave that other oil in the ground. But I love the answer we got first because it's not the usual answer, and it's the more interesting one. So those are the questions. Let's go on through. Interest rate were too low. I will show you what happens. Anyone take a guess at that? Staying with the idea that the amount of oil is fixed, and we're going to use it eventually. Anyone have a guess as to what happens if the people who are taking the oil out of the ground don't have the proper interest rate, have a low interest rate? What do you think would happen? Yeah.
They have less time to use like 2 days where they have to spend it and have to wait.
And we shall see, but you're thinking in the right direction. Okay? That's the right kind of thinking. So those are our questions. And now we get to look at different types of resources. Different types of reserves. We do reserves first, we do resources second. So the notion of current reserves is things that you could take now and it would make economic sense. So think oil in Saudi Arabia, not far below the ground, easy to get out. Current price of oil justifies taking it out. It's a current reserve. Think instead, what's really expensive oil? Anyone got an idea? What would be the most expensive oil to get your hands on? Yeah. All right, so let's assume that by the time you get the stuff out from the bottom of the seabed, right, and arrange not to spill it all over the place, and somehow or other suck it all the way down to where people are, that the stuff's outrageously expensive. Let's suppose it costs $150 a barrel. I don't think that's the right number, but let's suppose that. It would not count as a current reserve because the price of oil is about $100 a barrel. So anything that you cannot take out at current prices, in the literal sense of I take it out, I pay for getting it out, I pay for dragging it to market, in that literal sense, anything you can't pay for is not a current reserve. So you go up and you go to the Energy Information Administration website, cool place to go, and you look and see what are oil reserves, and they say current reserves. That is what they are talking about. No, we want to go forwards. Potential reserves. Potential at what price? Right? If you ask the question, what are potential reserves, then as you name a higher and higher price, you're going to get more and more potential reserves. So if you've gone back, if you wind the clock back to like for oil crisis 1, approximately 1971. Got my dates about right? Yeah, somewhere around there. Price of oil goes up a little bit. But if you wound the clock back then and you said, oh, there's probably oil locked in the shale in the mountains of Colorado and Wyoming, what would people have said? They would have said, yeah, there might be oil on the moon too, but who cares? The price of oil is, what was it then? $6 a barrel, $8 a barrel, some such silly number. And the cost of breaking an entire state up into little tiny pieces to suck its oil out was way more than that. And so if you'd said to someone, it's a current reserve, they'd say, no, it's clearly not a current reserve. So what about a potential reserve? And they'd be thinking, would it be a potential reserve at $50 a barrel? And they'd say, no. But if you'd said, you wound the clock forwards again, and you asked people today, then they would think potential reserve. Well, prices today are $100 a barrel, and what would I think? I would think it's not a current reserve at $100 a barrel, but if the price went to $150, I'd get it. So you'd say the shale is a potential reserve at a given price, at $150. So that's more nebulous. The idea of potential reserve depends upon what price somebody has in their head. So someone says, oh, the world has a huge amount of potential reserves. The question is, what are they thinking? Are they thinking at $100 a barrel, at $150 a barrel? What number do they have in their head? So the concept of potential reserves is really a function of price. The higher price you're willing to imagine, the more potential reserves you're going to imagine there are. And then, no, forwards. Yeah, we said that, right? And then we have the last possibility. What would reserves be? What would the notion of reserves be if you could get every last drop of oil on the planet? Right? That's the endowment of oil. Now, I assure you, you're not going to see anyone go to the trouble of getting every last drop of oil on the planet. So you will never see that amount actually done. Even if you look at a field, if you went to Texas, and you look and you said, of the oil that was underground, how much came up? What's your guess? It's really mature fields. What's your guess? How much of the oil comes actually up out of the ground when we ever use it? All? Anyone say all? No takers for all. You want to make a guess? I think it currently is on the order of around half, and it'll probably go a little up from there. That's my gut. And the reason why is an oil field has pressure in it. So when you stick a well down into it, the pressure pushes the oil up. If you're a petroleum engineer, you'd be all about managing that pressure and making it work for you. That's what you do for a living. Eventually, you get enough oil out of it, you're going to have pressure. And then you start doing things like pumping water into it and pumping other stuff into it to force the remaining oil up. And you don't get it all. And presumably, as the price of oil goes up, you're willing to do more what you call secondary recovery. But get it all? I don't think so. Get more than we got today? Yes. So this notion of endowment, even if you look at something we already know everything about, these Texas reserves, the endowment is a great deal larger than what's ever going to come up out of there. So endowment is probably not a good economic concept. It might be an interesting geological concept, but it's not an economic concept. Now we have all of these. I want to go this way. Yes. There we have a nice diagram. And we have two possibilities. It's something it's a field you discovered. I'm talking in terms of oil. You can think coal or anything else if you want, but I'll just go for oil, right? We've got the stuff we already know about. That stuff's discovered. We have the stuff we don't know about. That stuff's not discovered. One of the things that people do is they move that boundary from undiscovered into identified. And they do that by going out there and exploring for oil or gas. Have people found new oil discoveries in your lifetime or in your memory? You see things about, we found some more oil, it's over here? Yeah, there are new fields found. Not giant fields. What about gas fields? People found new gas fields? Anyone remember reading anything about natural gas? Come on, you're environmentalists, you must have read something about natural gas. Yeah. Natural gas? There is some up there, but... Yeah, so basically they discovered that, and they may have already known it, but again, the problem between, I know it's there and it's worth taking it out. But the Marcellus Shale all through the Northeast is a giant gas formation, and they're drilling wells everywhere, and in order to get it out, you have to pump liquids in. And liquids may be pretty nasty, and you might end up with them all over the place. Right? That's why you might know about it as an environmental science problem, as opposed to an energy problem. But that's a discovery. There's a huge discovery in the Mediterranean that runs roughly from northern Israel north, as near as I can tell. That's a discovery. No one knew there was gas out there. So there's new discoveries. People do effort to discover the stuff. And that would make that green thing go over into the undiscovered side. But something else is going on here. The price of oil has gone up quite a bit. Price of natural gas, too. And so what happens to that line between economic and sub-economic? It comes down as the price goes up. So that green rectangle is dragged downwards by oil, gas, et cetera, being more profitable to extract. Either the price went up or the technology for getting it out of the ground got better, technical progress. And that green thing goes over to the right because people find more stuff. The sum total of all of that, all the area in there, that should be something like total endowment. If you came back in 50 years, you'd find the green thing has gone down and it's gone to the right, but you'd find that bottom corner is still quite appreciable in reality. There's going to be a lot of stuff out there. Doesn't mean we'll ever want to get it, but it will be there. Which way? Is this the right way? Oh, okay. It's 4. Am I going right or wrong way? Wrong way. Now am I going the right way? Yeah. And this is how you make a figure bigger, which we've talked about. Gordon writes it in terms of willingness to pay. I mentioned that it's price. Price and marginal willingness to pay are, of course, the same. Technology. We are there. Active learning. The formula there is called the reserve ratio. Right? What you have is the estimate of current reserves, it's the stuff you're willing to take out today at today's prices, divided by current consumption. That number tends to be about 10. Does it mean anything? Suppose I told you that number was about 10 from when I was your age until today. Would that surprise you? It would surprise you, okay. So what is the number? It's clearly not what you think it is. What's current reserves? Right? Let's go back. What is a current reserve? Is it all the stuff? No. It's just what stuff? Come on. Okay, so remember, current reserves is not everything. It's just the stuff that looks good right now. So as time goes on, price goes up, and that makes current reserves go up. On the other hand, we take stuff out, and that makes current reserves go down. And it turns out that if you take current reserves, right, and you divide it by the number of years of production, it stays about 10. So it's not telling you anything about how much oil is out there. It's telling you something completely different. It's telling you something about what you would do if you were an oil company. Put your oil company hat on. You all want to be oil companies, right? How many of you want to be oil companies when you grow up? Really big ones like Exxon? Everyone wants to work for Exxon, Shell, BP. No sales, not a whole lot. All right. You will be shocked later on in life when you discover that when you want to work as an environmental manager to help people keep the planet clean, you find yourself working for one of these companies. But I could understand why that wouldn't come through your mind right now. So if you would put on your oil company hat, you'd think, look, how long does it take me from the day that I figure out where the oil is till when I actually get it to the consumer? Right? I got to do all kinds of stuff in between, like do exploratory holes, then build more drilling rigs, put in pipelines, etc. It's going to take me a while. So I better have stuff ready to go. If I'm going to sell you gasoline for your car, I better have stuff that's ready to take the oil out when you want the gasoline. In order to do that, do I have to discover it today or do I have to discover it earlier than that? When do I have to actually make the discovery to give you the gasoline today? When do you think? Earlier, like 5 years earlier, 6 years earlier, something like that to make it work? And so is it a surprise that if you went and looked at an oil company, they would say, oh yeah, we have about 10 years worth of reserves, meaning that from discovery to putting it in your gas tank is about a 10-year lag? I think that's all you're reading out of this current reserve number. You're reading something about how long their business takes from the time you first find the stuff until the time you're ready to sell it. Would it make any sense for them to find it earlier? Would you want to go out there and tramp through the bush like 5 years earlier? Would that pay? Does that pay? Suppose you found more reserves. would that pay for you as an oil company to do that? Or would you want to go find them earlier or later? When do you want to incur costs? Now? You want to incur your costs now? You want to incur your costs in the future? You get the same output either way. Which way? You want the future, right? Didn't you just do this problem set on discounting? So the present value of costs 5 years from now is a lot less than the present value of costs today. So why would an oil company go out there and have costs and have no benefit from those costs for an extra 5 years? Would that make any sense? No, it wouldn't make any sense. So that's why you get current reserves divided by annual production at some number about like 10, because that's how their business works. It's not a statement at all about what's in the ground. So don't misinterpret the current reserve ratio as a signal about how much stuff there is. It is only one thing. It's a statement about how the oil industry works. So there we have that. How useful is this calculation and why? And I gave you two answers, right? One answer is, if you're trying to figure out how much oil there is on the planet, is this a useful calculation? Yes or no? If you're trying to run an oil business, is this an interesting calculation? Yeah, because this tells you whether you're going to have product to sell. They're two different questions. We have two different answers. And here's the reason why it's not useful. It's in Gordon's view. Mine was a little different. As technology advances, you'll find new reserves, yes. The prices will change, yes. But I would have given a different answer. I would have said it's just an artifact of the oil industry. It doesn't tell you about reserves at all. Important definitions. A depletable or exhaustible resource, right? Something you could actually use up. Oil comes to mind. Yeah, there'll be new oil after we heat the earth enough and we restore the dinosaurs in the swamps. But you and your children won't be around to enjoy it. And for all practical purposes, we can take oil as exhaustible. Eventually, it'll be gone. Very long eventually, but it'll be gone. When you use a drop of oil up, no more oil gets made. That's the concept. Particularly, no more oil gets made. The other example, the example I've spent a lot of time on personally, is old-growth redwood trees, not old-growth sequoia trees like the slide is going to say in a minute. Gordon took Ronald Reagan too, literally. If you've seen one tree, you've seen them all. So old-growth redwood trees were on the order of thousands of years old, and they produce the very fine-grained lumber that you'd see as paneling in old Berkeley houses. So go to the faculty club, for instance, the Julia Morgan building, and therefore a nice building rather than, who's our official architect? Come on, who's the guy built the monuments you see around you? Right. So the nice buildings were Julia Morgan. Anyway, if you go in there and look at the paneling, look at this kind of stuff. In that building, that would be redwood. In the old-growth redwood. Young redwood doesn't have the same properties, doesn't look as nice. So the stuff is essentially exhaustible. It's going to be thousands of years before you can regrow that kind of stuff. That's an example. Coal, another example, although by the time you use up all the coal we can get our hands on, you won't be able to live on the planet. It'll be a little too hot. But still, it's exhaustible. How about the atmosphere? It's a different application entirely. Think of the atmosphere as a large pit into which you throw carbon dioxide, right? Eventually, you fill the pit up. As the pit gets more and more full, life on the planet gets more and more difficult. Still, it's an exhaustible resource. It's a garbage pit. So you can use this model of an exhaustible resource for things other than just, I have a big pile of coal. It's not, no new coal is going to get made. I have to decide how to allocate the coal over time. It could also be, I have so much ability to throw carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and when it's gone, it's gone. Right? That'd be another example of that kind of thinking. Recyclables. They're sort of exhaustible and sort of not. Copper is the really good example there, or aluminum. Both of those metals are recycled. Copper in particular. So if you have a house in Detroit, and you aren't currently taking care of it, what will happen to it? What will your neighbors do to it? Yeah? The copper pipe. Yeah, the wire, I think, is not that expensive yet. But they will steal the copper pipe. And that's a real problem. People will steal wire, too. Although not yet out of houses, I think. And then what they do with it is they take it down to a scrapyard and they sell it by the pound. You want to get a sense of what aluminum is worth? How many people drink soda? Okay, well, first of all, you oughtn't do that. It's because you should really not get diabetes and stuff. But given you are doing it, there's an experiment you can perform. Save your soda cans until you get a good big bag of them, like this, and then take it down to a recycling center and see what they pay you. If you go to the right recycling center, they'll pay you not just the deposit on the cans, the California refund value, they'll also pay you by the pound for the aluminum. So if you're going to go around the neighborhood and steal people's recyclables, take the aluminum cans. You get very much the best return by weight. And if you crush them by volume, too. Right? So that's recyclable, and it really gets recycled, both of those things. So there's just so much of the stuff in some sense. They're not making any more of it. And yet, instead of it being used once and it disappears, it can be used multiple times. And lastly, renewable resources, which I gather will be the next lecture. And something in that vein is fish. Right? Fish grow. So if you don't harvest too many fish, and that's of course the problem, but if you don't harvest too many fish, then fish will have baby fish, and the baby fish will produce new decent-sized fish. So that's the quintessential renewable resource. So in thinking of how you treat these things, why you get a little different